My wealthy aunt left me her 89 million business empire with one condition. I had to reveal a family secret at her funeral. As I opened the envelope, my father's face turned white. I always knew my Aunt Eleanor was different. While my parents lived modestly, avoiding attention like it was a disease, Aunt Eleanor thrived in the spotlight. She was bold, unapologetic, and wealthy beyond imagination. Her real estate empire was worth millions, and she flaunted it. Luxury cars, designer clothes, and a penthouse overlooking the city. My father, on the other hand, hated her success. He called her reckless and selfish, but I think he was just jealous. When Aunt Eleanor passed away unexpectedly, the entire family gathered for her funeral. It was a somber affair, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My father barely spoke, his jaw clenched tight, and my mother kept glancing at him like she was waiting for him to explode. Then, as the service ended, an attorney stepped forward. He was holding a sealed envelope, and his voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Sienna," he said, looking directly at me, "your aunt left you everything. Her business, her properties, her entire estate, valued at $89 million. The room erupted in gasps. My heart raced. 89 million? Me? I wasn't even her favorite niece. But then the attorney added, "There's a condition. Before the inheritance is finalized, you must read the contents of this envelope out loud right here, right now." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have. I glanced at my father, and for a split second, I thought I saw fear in his eyes. I opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. "Sienna," I began reading, my voice shaky. "If you're reading this, then I am gone, and it's time for the truth to come out. The man you call your father is not your real father." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked up, and my father's face had turned white. "Stop reading," he shouted, his voice trembling, but I couldn't stop. I had to know. The letter continued. "He stole you from someone else." The room erupted into chaos. My mother burst into tears, and my father lunged toward me, trying to grab the letter. "This is a lie," he screamed. "Eleanor's trying to ruin me," but I held the letter tight, my mind racing. What was Aunt Eleanor trying to tell me, and why now? The attorney stepped forward again, holding up a hand to silence the room. "There's more," he said, handing me another document. I unfolded it, my hands shaking. It was a birth certificate, my birth certificate, but the name listed under father wasn't my dad's. It was someone else's. The name on the birth certificate was unfamiliar. Nathaniel Hayes. My eyes scanned the document, searching for some kind of mistake, but there was none. The date, the hospital, even my mother's name. It was all correct, except for one thing. The man I'd called Dad my entire life wasn't listed as my father. I looked up at my mother, tears streaming down her face. She didn't say a word, but her silence spoke volumes. My father, or the man I thought was my father, was pacing, now his face red with anger. "This is ridiculous," he shouted. "Eleanor always hated me. She's doing this to destroy our family." But the attorney wasn't finished. He handed me another document, a letter, handwritten and yellowed with age. "Read it," he said quietly. I unfolded the paper, my hands trembling. The handwriting was elegant, unmistakably Aunt Eleanor's. "Sienna," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you the truth sooner, but I couldn't. Your mother made me promise to keep this secret, but now that I'm gone, it's time you knew. Nathaniel Hayes is your real father. He loved your mother deeply, but your father, the man you know as your father, couldn't accept it. When you were born, he falsified documents to cut Nathaniel out of your life. He erased him, Sienna, and your mother, she let him." This room was dead silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. My mind was spinning. "Is this true?" I asked, turning to my mother. She didn't answer. She just cried harder. My father, no, the man I'd called my father, stepped forward, his face twisted in rage. "You're not going to believe this nonsense, are you?" he demanded. "Eleanor was a liar. She hated me. She's trying to turn you against me." But I wasn't listening. I was staring at the letter, at the words that had just shattered my world. "Why?" I whispered, looking at my mother. "Why didn't you tell me?" She finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "I wanted to protect you. I thought it was for the best." "Protect me?" I repeated, my voice rising. "From what? The truth?" The attorney cleared his throat. "There's more," he said, handing me another envelope. I opened it, my hands shaking even more now. Inside was a DNA test result, proof that I wasn't biologically related to the man I'd called my father. And then, at the bottom of the envelope, I found a photograph. It was old, faded, but still clear enough to make out the faces. It was my mother, smiling, her arm around a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Nathaniel Hayes, my real father. I stared at the photograph, my heart pounding. Nathaniel Hayes looked nothing like the man I'd called Dad my entire life. He looked kind, gentle, the kind of person you'd want to know. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. "He was a good man," she said. "We were in love, but your father, the man you know as your father, he couldn't accept it. He was jealous, angry. When he found out I was pregnant, he made sure Nathaniel would never be part of your life." "How?" I demanded. She hesitated, then said, "He threatened him, told him if he ever tried to contact us, he'd ruin his life. And then he forged the documents. He made it look like he was your father. I wanted to tell you, Sienna, but I was scared of what he'd do. I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. My entire life, everything I thought I knew was a lie. Why didn't Aunt Eleanor tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice breaking. She wanted to, my mother said, but I begged her not to. I thought it would destroy our family. I looked at the man I'd called my father. He was standing in the corner now, his arms crossed, his face a mask of anger and fear. Is this true? I asked him. He didn't answer. He just glared at me, his jaw clenched tight. Answer me, I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. Finally, he spoke. You're really going to believe her? He sneered. Your aunt was a manipulative liar. She's been trying to tear this family apart for years, but I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. You lied to me, I said, my voice trembling. You stole my real father from me. You stole my life. He took a step toward me, his eyes blazing. I raised you, he shouted. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? By believing some ridiculous story? I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. You didn't give me everything, I said. You took something from me, something I can never get back. The attorney stepped forward again, holding up another document. There's one more thing, he said. Aunt Eleanor left you a choice. I took the document, my hand shaking. It was a letter, written in her elegant handwriting, Sienna. It read, if you choose to accept this inheritance, you must make a decision. You can expose your father's actions to the world, or you can walk away and let the truth die with me. The choice is yours. I looked around the room at the faces of my family, some shocked, some angry, some waiting for me to speak. I had the power to ruin the man I'd called my father, to expose his lies, to make sure he paid for what he'd done, but I also had the chance to find my real father, to finally know the truth. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I'm keeping the inheritance, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. And I'm finding my real father. The room erupted into chaos. My father, no, the man I'd called my father, lunged toward me, his face twisted, in rage. You ungrateful little, he started, but the attorney stepped between us, holding up a hand. That's enough, the attorney said firmly. The decision has been made. The inheritance belongs to Sienna, and the terms of the will are clear. My father backed away, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. He looked at me with a mixture of anger and something else. Fear, maybe. Fear of what I might do next. My mother was crying quietly, her hands covering her face. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. Not yet. She'd kept this secret from me for my entire life. She'd let me believe a lie. The rest of the family was murmuring among themselves, some shaking their heads, others looking at me with pity. I didn't care. I didn't need their pity. I needed answers. I turned to the attorney. Do you have any information about Nathaniel Hayes? Anything that can help me find him? He nodded. Your aunt left a file for you. It's in her office. She wanted you to have everything you need to start your search. I didn't wait. I walked out of the funeral home, the envelope clutched tightly in my hands. The cool air hit my face, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Aunt Eleanor's office was in the heart of the city, in a sleek, high-rise building that bore her name. I'd been there a few times before, but never like this. Never as the owner. The receptionist recognized me immediately and led me to Aunt Eleanor's office. It was exactly as I remembered it. Elegant, modern, and filled with the scent of her favorite perfume. On the desk was a thick file folder with my name on it. I opened it, my hands trembling. Inside were more documents, birth certificates, old photographs, letters, and even a recent address for Nathaniel Hayes. I sat down, my heart racing as I sifted through the papers. There were letters from Nathaniel to my mother, begging to see me. There were legal documents showing how my father had falsified records to cut him out of my life. And there were photographs, so many photographs of Nathaniel and my mother, smiling, happy, in love. One photograph caught my eye. It was of Nathaniel holding a baby, me. He was smiling down at me, his eyes filled with love. Tears streamed down my face as I realized what I'd missed, what I'd been denied. I picked up the phone and dialed the number listed for Nathaniel Hayes. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the buttons. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then a voice answered. Hello? It was him. I could feel it in my bones. Hi, I said, my voice trembling. My name is Sienna. I think you're my father. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then, softly, he said, I've been waiting for this call for 30 years. The sound of his voice sent a wave of emotions crashing over me. Relief, sadness, anger, and something else I couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. I just found out, I said, my voice breaking, about you. About everything. Nathaniel was silent for a moment, and I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost hesitant. I've thought about this moment for so long, he said, wondering what I'd say if I ever got the chance to talk to you. But now that it's here, I don't even know where to start. Me neither, I admitted, wiping tears from my face. I have so many questions, so many things I want to know. I'll tell you everything, he said quickly. Anything you want to know. I need to see you, Sienna. I need to see my daughter. His words hit me like a punch to the chest. My daughter. I'd never heard anyone say those words with so much emotion, so much love. I want to see you too, I said. Can we meet soon? Of course, he said without hesitation. I'll drop everything. Just tell me when and where. We made plans to meet the next day at a cafe near his home. When I hung up, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. What if he wasn't what I'd imagined? What if meeting him only made things more complicated? But I didn't have time to dwell on it. The door to Aunt Eleanor's office opened, and the attorney walked in, holding a stack of papers. I thought you might need these, he said, setting them on the desk. They're the legal documents transferring ownership of your aunt's estate to you. Once you sign them, everything will be yours. I stared at the papers, my mind racing. $89 million, a business empire. It was more money than I could ever imagine, but it didn't feel real. Not yet. What happens if I don't sign them? I asked. The attorney raised an eyebrow. The estate would go to your next of kin, your parents, but given the circumstances, I assume that's not what you want. I shook my head. No, it's not. I picked up a pen and signed the papers, my hand trembling slightly. When I was done, the attorney nodded. Congratulations, he said. You're now the owner of Eleanor Hayes Enterprises. The weight of those words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I wasn't just inheriting money, I was inheriting a legacy, a responsibility. But first, I had to meet my father. The next morning, I stood outside the cafe, my heart pounding. I'd barely slept, my mind racing with questions and what ifs. What if he didn't like me? What if this was all a mistake? But when I walked inside and saw him sitting at a corner table, all my doubts melted away. Nathaniel Hayes looked exactly like the man in the photographs, tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. When he saw me, he stood up, his face lighting up with a mix of joy and disbelief. Sienna, he said, his voice trembling. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, staring at him, until he opened his arms, and then I ran to him. He hugged me tightly, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I can't believe this is real, he said, pulling back to look at me. You're even more beautiful than I imagined. I laughed, wiping tears from my face. I can't believe it either. I've spent my whole life thinking someone else was my father. His expression darkened slightly at that, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he gestured to the table. Sit down, let's talk. We spent hours talking. About my childhood, his life, and everything in between. He told me about his career as a musician, about how he'd never stopped thinking about me, even after my mother cut him out of my life. I tried to reach out, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But your father, the man you thought was your father, made it clear that if I ever came near you, he'd make my life a living hell. I didn't want to risk it. I thought staying away was the best way to protect you. I reached across the table and took his hand. You don't have to protect me anymore. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. He smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. I just wish I could have been there for you. For all of it. Me too, I said softly. But we have now. That's what matters. We talked until the cafe closed, and even then, it didn't feel like enough. There was so much to catch up on, so much lost time to make up for. As we walked out into the evening air, Nathaniel turned to me. What happens now? He asked. I took a deep breath. Now, I figure out how to run an $89 million business empire, I said with a laugh. He smiled. And what about your father, the man who raised you? I hesitated. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to confront him, to make him face what he did, but another part of me just wants to move on, to focus on the future. Nathaniel nodded. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. You're my daughter, Sienna, and I'm not going anywhere. His words filled me with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged, but as I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind. Between meeting with lawyers, accountants, and business managers, I barely had time to breathe. Aunt Eleanor's empire was vast, and I had a lot to learn, but every night I called Nathaniel. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told me stories about his life, his music, and the dreams he'd had for us. I told him about my childhood, my dreams, and the questions I'd always had but never dared to ask. It was strange, getting to know someone who was both a stranger and my father, but it felt right, like I was finally filling in the missing pieces of myself. One evening, as I sat in Aunt Eleanor's office going over financial reports, there was a knock at the door. Come in, I called, not looking up. The door opened, and I heard footsteps. When I finally glanced up, my heart stopped. It was him, the man I'd called my father. He looked older somehow, his face lined with worry and regret. He stood in the doorway, hesitating, like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice cold. He took a step forward, his hands trembling. I came to talk, he said, to explain. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Explain what? How you lied to me my entire life? How you stole me from my real father? He flinched at that, but he didn't back down. I know I made mistakes, he said, but I did what I thought was best for you, for our family. Our family? I repeated, my voice rising. You destroyed our family. You lied to me, to my mother, to everyone. He looked down, his shoulders slumping. I was scared, he admitted, scared of losing you, scared of losing her. I thought if I could just keep things the way they were, everything would be okay. But it wasn't okay, I said, my voice breaking. You took something from me that I can never get back. You took my father. He didn't say anything, just stood there, his head bowed, like he was waiting for me to yell at him some more. But I was tired of being angry, tired of carrying the weight of his lies. Why are you here? I asked again, my voice quieter this time. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to see you, he said, to tell you that I'm sorry, and that I love you. His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream at him, to make him feel the pain he'd caused me, but all I felt was sadness. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. Finally, not yet, maybe not ever, but I'm tired of being angry, so if you're really sorry, prove it, be better. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I will, he said, I promise. And then he turned and walked out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. After that night, things began to change. change, slowly, painfully, but they changed. The man I'd called my father started showing up, not to ask for forgiveness, but to help. He offered to guide me through the complexities of Aunt Eleanor's business, sharing insights from his own career. At first, I resisted. I didn't want his help. I didn't want to owe him anything, but as the weeks went by, I realized he wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it for me. And maybe, just maybe, that counted for something. Meanwhile, my relationship with Nathaniel grew stronger. We spent weekends together, exploring the city, sharing meals, and talking about everything we'd missed. He taught me how to play the guitar, and I told him about my dreams of traveling the world. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of awkwardness, moments when the weight of our lost years felt unbearable, but we were trying, and that was enough. One evening, as Nathaniel and I sat on his porch watching the sunset, he turned to me with a serious expression. "Sienna," he said, "there's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "Your aunt. She didn't just leave you the business. She left you a letter. One she asked me to give you when the time was right." I stared at him, my mind racing. "What does it say?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. "I don't know," he said. "She made me promise not to read it, but I think it's time you did." I took the envelope, my hands trembling. The paper felt heavy, like it held more than just words. I opened it and began to read. "Sienna," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means you found Nathaniel, and I hope it means you've found peace. I've carried this secret for so long, and it's weighed on me more than you'll ever know. But I did it for you, because I loved you, and because I believed you deserved the truth." Tears filled my eyes as I read on. "There's one more thing you need to know. The man you've called your father all these years, he's not the villain I made him out to be. He made mistakes, yes, but he loved you, and he still does. Don't let anger rob you of the chance to heal. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about moving forward, and you, Sienna, deserve to move forward." I looked up at Nathaniel, my vision blurred by tears. "Did you know about this?" He shook his head. "No, but it sounds like something Eleanor would say. She always saw the bigger picture." I folded the letter and held it to my chest, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Gratitude, sadness, and something else. "Hope. What are you going to do?" Nathaniel asked gently. I took a deep breath. "I'm going to try," I said, "to forgive, to move forward. For me." He smiled and put an arm around my shoulders. "That's all anyone can ask for." The months that followed were a journey, not just of running a business or rebuilding relationships, but of rediscovering myself. I threw myself into Aunt Eleanor's empire, learning everything I could about real estate, finance, and leadership. It wasn't easy, but it was fulfilling. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a purpose. My relationship with Nathaniel continued to grow. We traveled together, visited places he'd always dreamed of showing me, and even started writing music together. It was like making up for lost time, one note at a time. As for the man I'd called my father, things were complicated. We didn't talk much, but when we did, it was different. Less anger, more understanding. He kept his promise to be better, and while I wasn't ready to fully forgive him, I could see he was trying, and that mattered. One evening, as I sat in Aunt Eleanor's office, now my office, I found myself staring at the photograph she'd left me, the one of Nathaniel holding me as a baby. I thought about everything that had happened, about the secrets and lies and the truth that had finally come to light, and I realized something. This wasn't just a story about betrayal or inheritance. It was a story about love. Love that had been hidden, love that had been lost, and love that had been found. I picked up the phone and dialed Nathaniel's number. "Hey," he answered, his voice warm and familiar. "Hey," I said, smiling. "I was thinking maybe we could take a trip somewhere new, just you and me." There was a pause, and then he laughed. "I'd like that," he said. "Where were you thinking?" "Anywhere," I said. "Everywhere. I just want to see the world with you." "Then let's do it," he said. "We've got a lot of catching up to do." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. The past was still there, with all its pain and secrets, but it didn't define me anymore. I was Sienna Hayes, daughter, heiress, and for the first time in my life, truly myself, and that was enough.